The late winter wind screamed through the San Juan Mountains like a wounded thing, tearing across the ridges and clawing at the valley below. Snow still clung to the higher peaks, but down where Bo Hartley's ranch sat, the thaw had begun. The earth had turned to mud and slush that pulled at boots and swallowed wagon wheels whole. It was a messy, weary season, the kind that wore a man thin. Bo stood on his porch, one calloused hand wrapped around a mug of coffee gone cold hours ago. He hadn't slept much. The calf in the birthing shed had taken sick in the night, and by the time he'd finished tending it, the first gray light was creeping across the mountains. Behind him, the house was silent, too silent. It had been that way for 4 months now, ever since Mary died of the lung fever that swept through the valley. A sound broke the stillness. "Papa," came a small, trembling voice from inside. "Lucy's coughing again." Bo turned toward the doorway. His eldest, Samuel, stood there, 9 years old, but with eyes that had already seen too much. Behind him came the rasping cough of 5-year-old Lucy, followed by the whimper of little Thomas. "I'm coming, son," Bo said softly, setting the mug aside. The floorboards creaked beneath his boots as he stepped inside. Lucy lay curled up in bed, her small body shaking with each harsh cough. Bo knelt beside her, brushing the sweat-matted hair from her forehead. "Easy, little bird," he murmured, voice thick with helplessness. She felt too light in his arms, like a handful of sticks wrapped in a nightgown. He carried her to the kitchen and set her in a chair by the stove. "I'll get you some honey water," he said, fumbling with the kettle. Mary had always made it look easy. Fires burning steady, bread rising just right, something warm always on the table. But Bo's cooking never turned out right. The children ate without complaint, but he saw the hollowness in their cheeks, the thinness of their arms. "I can help, Papa," Samuel offered quietly, already fetching water from the bucket. "You're a good boy," Bo said, trying to smile, "but you shouldn't have to do all this." He stopped, words catching. Samuel just nodded like he understood far too much for a child. After Lucy settled with her honey water, Bo checked the livestock. The cattle were lean, their winter coats hanging loose. 2 good mares had already been sold just to buy feed. He'd thought about selling more, but there wouldn't be much left of the Double H Ranch if he did. By the time he hitched the wagon to head into Mercy's Bend, the sun was high and the mud deep. He needed flour, salt, and maybe a few tins of beans if he could stretch the money. More than that, he needed help. Mrs. Patterson from the neighboring ranch had been stopping by, but her daughter was due any day now. Bo couldn't keep asking favors. The house needed tending, the children needed care, and he was one man trying to do it all. "Can we come?" Little Thomas piped up as Bo loaded the wagon. "Not today, son. You stay here and help Samuel watch your sister. I'll bring something special back if you're good." Quote, "The road to town was 8 miles of misery, deep ruts, half-melted snow, and the kind of wind that bit through layers of wool." By the time Bo reached Mercy's Bend, his shoulders ached and his patience was wearing thin. The town was little more than a handful of weathered buildings, one main street lined with a general store, a saloon, a church, and a few other places that hung on through grit alone. Bo tied off the horses in front of Morrison's general store and went inside. The familiar scent of coffee, leather, and old wood met him. Tom Morrison looked up from his ledger. "Bo," he said, voice full of quiet sympathy, "how are the young'uns?" "Managing," Bo answered. He wasn't one for talk, need the usual. "Flour, salt, some beans." Tom nodded, but Bo hesitated before leaving the counter. "You hear of anyone looking for work? Cooking, cleaning, anything like that?" Tom's expression softened. "Wish I could help, Bo. Times are hard. Folks can barely feed their own. Maybe try the hotel. Sometimes travelers stop through needing work." Bo nodded, though he didn't have much hope. He picked out what he could afford, setting back the tin of peaches he'd wanted to surprise the kids with. Maybe next time. As he loaded the wagon, a ruckus down by the grain warehouse caught his attention. Sheriff Watson stood with Dan Fletcher, the hotel owner, and another figure, A woman sitting against the wall clutching a small carpet bag. I said move along, Fletcher barked. Ain't got room for beggars. I'm not begging, the woman's voice was thin but steady. I'm looking for work, cooking, cleaning, laundry, anything. I just need a chance. What you need is to get on the next stage out of here, the sheriff muttered. Town don't need more strays. Bo found himself walking closer before he'd even decided to. The woman rose to her feet slowly. She was painfully thin, her face pale from hunger, her dress patched so many times it was more stitches than fabric. Her dark hair was pinned in a severe bun that only made the hollows of her cheeks more pronounced. Clara May, isn't it? Fletcher sneered. That widow from Denver. The barren one. No wonder your husband's kin threw you out. What good's a woman who can't give a man sons? Clara flinched but didn't back down. I can cook. I can mend. That's all I'm asking for. Work, not charity. Something in Bo stirred at her words. Maybe it was her pride. Maybe it was the thought of Lucy coughing herself hoarse in that cold house. Ma'am, he said suddenly, and all three men turned. You say you can cook? Clara blinked at him, uncertain. Yes, sir. I can cook, clean, tend children. Bo studied her for a long moment. You got anyone depending on you? No, sir. Her voice trembled just slightly. Then you do now, he said. I got 3 children need tending. Room, board, and wages. $1 a week if the work's good. Her mouth fell open. Yes, sir, I'm grateful. Get your things, Bo said. She picked up her carpet bag, clearly all she owned. Fletcher scoffed. You don't know what you're getting into, Hartley. Town'll talk. Men like you taking in a strange woman, wife barely in the ground. Bo's gaze was cold. Let him talk. My children come first. Quote. He turned and headed for his wagon. Clara followed, her boots squelching in the mud. As they drove out of town, neither spoke for a long while. The horses plodded through ruts, the mountains rising ahead of them. Clara sat straight-backed, hands clasped in her lap, eyes fixed on the horizon. Bo glanced at her once, at the worn gloves, the trembling jaw she tried to keep steady, and thought, not for the first time, that desperation makes strangers of us all. But maybe, just maybe, this stranger might be the answer to his family's prayers. The wagon wheels squelched through the thawing mud as they made their slow climb out of Mercy's Bend. The wind cut sharp, carrying the scent of pine and melting snow. Clara May Thompson sat rigid beside Bo, hands folded so tightly in her lap that her knuckles showed white through the thin fabric of her gloves. For a while, neither spoke. Bo focused on the road, keeping the horses steady through the deep ruts. He wasn't sure what possessed him to bring this stranger home. Desperation, maybe. But when he'd seen her standing there, thin and proud even while the men mocked her, something inside him had refused to walk away. Finally, Clara's voice broke the silence. Your children, she said softly, not quite looking at him. Tell me about them. Bo's grip tightened on the reins. Samuel's 9. Too serious for his age, but he's had to be since. He stopped swallowing. Lucy's 5, sweet little thing, but weak in the lungs. And Thomas, 3. Still asks for his mama every morning. Clara nodded slowly, eyes on the horizon. I'm sorry for your loss. Bo gave a slight nod. Lung fever took her. Couldn't get the doctor through the pass in time. Storms had it blocked. What about you, Mrs. Thompson? He asked after a long moment. Your husband? A shadow crossed her face. Mining accident, 2 years ago. Her tone made it clear she didn't want to say more. The rest of the ride passed in uneasy silence. When the ranch finally came into view, Clara's breath caught. The double H spread across the valley floor. Weathered barns, a wide corral, and a 2-story log house that leaned a little at the corners but stood sturdy against the mountain wind. It's not much, Bo said quietly, catching the look on her face, but it's home. It looks like a good home, Clara said softly. Bo pulled the wagon to a stop. The front door flew open, and a small boy came running out, boots too big, face flushed with excitement. "Papa!" Thomas cried. "You're back!" "Easy, boy." Bo scooped him up, laughing despite himself. Samuel appeared in the doorway, older and more careful, watching the stranger beside his father with wary curiosity. "This here's Mrs. Thompson," Bo said. "She's come to help us around the house." Samuel nodded politely, but his small face stayed guarded. "Lucy's sleeping," he said. "Her cough's worse." Bo's expression darkened, but before he could move, Clara was already stepping down from the wagon. "May I see her?" she asked. Bo hesitated, then nodded. "Inside, first room to the left." Quote, "The house smelled of smoke, damp wood, and something faintly sour. Neglect." Clara moved quietly through the cluttered kitchen into the children's room. The little girl lay propped up in bed, her thin face flushed, breath rasping in her chest. "Hello, sweetheart," Clara whispered, kneeling beside her. "I'm Miss Clara. Your papa says you've been awful brave." Lucy's fevered eyes blinked open. "My throat hurts," she whispered. "I know, darling. Let's see what we can do about that." Clara disappeared into the kitchen, found a kettle, and began sorting through the few supplies on the shelves. She moved with purpose, as if the work steadied her. Within minutes, the smell of warm honey water filled the air. Bo stood in the doorway, watching her. "You sure know your way around a stove," he said quietly. "My grandmother taught me," she replied. "Said a woman should always know how to heal with her hands." She glanced at him, "and how to cook beans without burning them." A small smile tugged at Bo's mouth. "Then you're already better than me." By evening, the cabin had changed. The kitchen, once a mess of dirty dishes and cold ashes, glowed with firelight. The floor had been swept, the stove polished, and the smell of real food, beans, pork, and fresh cornbread, filled the air. Even Lucy, pale but smiling, managed to eat half a bowl. Bo couldn't remember the last time the house had felt this warm. After supper, Samuel helped clear the table while Clara tucked the younger ones into bed. When she returned, Bo was standing by the fire, hat in hand, looking suddenly uncertain. "There's a spare room off the kitchen," he said. "Used to be for the hired hand when we could afford one. It's got a stove and a proper bed." "That'll suit me fine," Clara said quietly. He nodded, then cleared his throat. "We should set a few rules. Sundays off after breakfast. Wages paid Saturday evenings. And no followers." She arched a brow, the faintest trace of humor softening her tired features. "I'm not expecting any, Mr. Hartley." "Good. Children rise early. Breakfast by 6. Dinner at noon if I'm home. Supper at 6 regardless." "Understood." Quote, Clara hesitated, then asked softly, "Am I allowed to discipline them if needed?" Bo stiffened. "What kind of discipline?" "Nothing harsh. A corner, an extra chore, maybe a firm word. I don't hold with striking children." His shoulders eased. Neither did their mother. "That'll do fine." He started toward the stairs, then paused. "You did good today. Thank you." Her eyes lifted, meeting his for a brief moment. "Just doing what I was hired for, Mr. Hartley." Bo gave a small nod and disappeared up the stairs. That night, Clara lay awake in her small room, listening to the wind batter the shutters. The blankets were clean, the bed soft, a luxury after months of sleeping in barns and alleys. Her body ached, but her heart ached more. Through the thin wall, she could hear Lucy's breathing, steady now, and the faint creak of Bo's footsteps upstairs. For the first time in 2 years, Clara allowed herself to hope. She had work, she had shelter, and maybe, just maybe, a chance to belong again. Bo sat awake too, staring into the dying fire. The sound of soft movement from Clara's room reached him, and he felt something stir in his chest, something dangerous, something he thought he'd buried with Mary. He closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. She was a stranger, a hired hand, that was all. But as the wind howled outside and the fire burned low, he couldn't shake the feeling that, somehow, the lonely emptiness of his home had begun to change. and that the woman sleeping just beyond the wall might be the reason why. Spring arrived slowly in the San Juan Mountains, dripping from the eaves one melt at a time. The snow retreated into the high passes, and the valley began to breathe again. For the first time in months, laughter echoed inside the Double H Ranch. It came from the children, Samuel teasing Thomas in the yard, Lucy chasing chickens in her little boots, her cough finally gone. Bo Hartley would stand on the porch some mornings, arms crossed, watching them play. The sight filled him with a strange kind of peace, and every time his eyes drifted toward the garden, where Clara worked in the soft sunlight, that peace deepened into something warmer, something he didn't dare name yet. Clara had been at the ranch 2 months now. Under her care, the house had transformed. Floors shone, curtains fluttered bright and clean, fresh bread baked daily, and the sound of her humming filled the air like a benediction. Even the neighbors had noticed. "She's a miracle worker, that one," Mrs. Patterson said once at the Mercantile. "House looks like it's breathing again." But not everyone was so kind. The whispers had started, soft at first, then sharper. A widowed rancher living with a woman under his roof? Improper. Unchristian. And that woman, ain't she the barren one from Denver? Clara heard the whispers, felt their sting, but said nothing. She had survived far worse than gossip. Her only concern was keeping her small, fragile world safe, the children, the ranch, and the man whose quiet kindness had begun to thaw her heart. One warm evening, a sudden storm rolled down from the mountains, wind whipping the trees until the house creaked on its foundations. Inside, Clara gathered the children close by the fire. "Tell us a story, Miss Clara," Lucy begged, her little hands clutching Clara's skirt. Bo, dripping wet from checking the barn, came in just as Clara began. Her voice was low and steady, weaving a tale of her grandmother's Ireland, of courage, storms, and finding light in dark places. The thunder cracked outside. The children squealed but stayed close. Bo stood in the doorway, watching her. The way the firelight caught her hair, the tenderness in her eyes, it stirred something fierce and undeniable inside him. When the storm passed and the children were tucked in, Clara moved to stoke the dying fire. Bo was still there, leaning against the wall, watching her. "You got a gift," he said quietly. "For what?" she asked. "For turning a cold house into a home." She looked up, startled. "It's just work, Mr. Hartley." "No," he said, stepping closer. "It's more than that." Quote, the silence between them was soft, heavy. Clara could feel his warmth, his nearness, the steady rhythm of his breath. "Bo," she said carefully, "you shouldn't." "Shouldn't what?" His voice was low, rough. "Feel something again?" She turned away, heart pounding. "I'm not the kind of woman you need. The town already talks. And her voice broke, "I can't give you what your wife gave you. I can't give you more children." Bo reached out, gently touching her arm. "I don't need more children," he said. "I need someone who'll love the ones I have. Someone who makes this house feel alive again." "That's you, Clara." Her throat tightened. "You don't know what you're asking. My past?" "Doesn't matter." His words were quiet but firm. "You're here. You're kind. You're strong. That's all that matters." She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that maybe she deserved a little happiness after so many years of pain. But before she could answer, a sharp knock came at the door. When Bo opened it, 3 women stood outside. Mrs. Patterson, Mrs. Morrison, and Mrs. White, their faces set in self-righteous lines. "Good evening, Mr. Hartley," Mrs. Patterson began. "We need to speak with your housekeeper." Bo frowned. "It's late." "This can't wait," she said. Clara appeared behind him, wiping her hands on her apron. "What's this about?" The women exchanged looks. Mrs. White stepped forward. "Mrs. Thompson, we're here out of Christian concern. Your arrangement here, it isn't proper. A widowed man and a woman under the same roof. People are talking." Clara's back stiffened. "The children needed care. That's all this is." Mrs. Morrison's mouth tightened. "People don't see it that way. They see a desperate woman trying to trap a man with sympathy and scandal." Bo's jaw clenched. "That's enough." "Please, Mr. Hartley," Mrs. Patterson said, her voice soft but sharp underneath. For the children's sake, you should find a more suitable arrangement. If Mrs. Thompson truly cares about them, she'll do what's best and leave. Clara's hands trembled, but her voice stayed calm. If I leave, those children will suffer. They're just now healing. Quote, sometimes sacrifice is what's right, Mrs. White said coolly. Bo stepped forward. You said your piece. Now, get off my land. Mrs. Patterson looked wounded but turned away. We'll pray for you, Mr. Hartley, she said. When they were gone, Clara stood silent, her face pale. They'll ruin you, she whispered, and the children. The town will never forgive it. Let them talk, Bo said fiercely. They don't live here. They don't see what I see. Her voice trembled. You don't understand, Bo. I can't survive another scandal. I've been thrown out before, called cursed, useless. He caught her hand, stopping her words. You're not useless. You're the strongest woman I've ever met. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she didn't pull away. I don't know if I can stay. Then don't go, he said softly. Stay for the children. Stay for me. Their eyes met in the firelight. Two broken souls who had found something they didn't expect. The air between them changed. Charged with a quiet ache neither could deny. Bo, she whispered. He leaned closer, voice low and certain. Marry me, Clara. Make this right, in God's eyes and everyone else's. She stared at him, breath caught. You can't mean. I do, he said simply. I need you, not as my cook, not as my housekeeper, as my wife. Outside, the wind rustled the pine trees. Inside, the fire crackled low. And for the first time since Mary's death, and since Clara's long fall from grace, hope felt possible again. She took a shaky breath. Let me think. Take all the time you need, Bo said. I'll be here. That night, Clara lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She could still feel his touch, still hear the warmth in his voice. Could a woman who'd been broken by cruelty truly start over? Could she build a life again? Not from duty, but from love. When the dawn came pale and soft over the mountains, Clara rose, her mind made up. For years, she had wandered, unwanted, unloved. But Bo Hartley and his children had given her something she never thought she'd have again, a home. And she wasn't going to lose it. Clara May Thompson decided that morning she would stay, not as a servant, but as family. And when she stepped onto the porch, Bo was already there, waiting for her. She met his eyes and whispered, yes. He smiled, the first true smile in months. Then welcome home, Mrs. Hartley.